London, the city of dreams and ambitions, where ancient streets intertwine with modern skyscrapers, bearing witness to countless love stories and separations. In a luxurious apartment nestled in the heart of the city, Clara Carter sat quietly on the sofa, clutching a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Her eyes followed the golden lights flickering through the window, reflecting the blurred image of a woman who once believed in eternal love. She once had it all: a loving husband, a promising career, and a home filled with happiness. Clara and Nicholas Hayes met when they both had nothing but dreams and determination as their only assets. They had held each other's hands through the toughest of times, from cramped apartments and simple dinners of instant noodles to finally building a successful company and living in an opulent apartment in the heart of London. Back in those days, Nicholas was her whole world. He was not just her husband, but also her companion, her unwavering pillar of support. They had spent sleepless nights together, planning their company's growth, sharing dreams and aspirations for the future. Clara loved the way Nicholas looked at her, the passion in his eyes when he spoke of their dreams. But as time passed, their dreams seemed to drift in different directions. Nicholas' career soared higher and higher, but their moments together grew fewer. The long nights waiting for him in vain, the increasingly distant embraces, and the conversations that gradually became mere routine exchanges about work. Clara could feel the change creeping in, but she convinced herself that it was just the pressures of work, that their love was still intact as it had always been. Yet all those beliefs shattered one seemingly ordinary evening. Nicholas came home after a long day, his face tired and carrying an unsettling unfamiliarity. He no longer embraced her as before. Instead, he stood there, his eyes avoiding hers. The room was filled with a suffocating silence, with only the ticking of the clock echoing through the space. Clara placed her teacup on the table, a wave of unease washing over her. "Nicholas, is something wrong?" she asked, her voice gentle yet tinged with worry. He took a deep breath, his eyes clouded with hesitation before he slowly said, "Clara, I think we should stop." His words pierced through her heart like a sharp blade. Clara froze, her lips trembling, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. "Stop? What do you mean?" Nicholas avoided her gaze, his hands clenched into fists. "I think divorce is the best solution for both of us." Time seemed to stand still. The world around Clara suddenly blurred, her heart tightening painfully. She let out a bitter, trembling laugh. "You're talking about divorce? Nicholas, we've overcome so many hardships together. We once promised never to give up on each other, and now you want to walk away?" Nicholas closed his eyes, pain evident in them, pain that Clara could not reach. "I'm sorry, Clara. I'm no longer the man who can make you happy." Clara shook her head, her voice cracking. "You're saying you can't make me happy anymore? Or is there someone else?" His silence made the room even more stifling. Clara stared at him, searching for a denial, but all she got was the guilty bow of his head. In that moment, she understood everything. "Is it true?" Her voice broke, tears brimming in her eyes. Nicholas didn't respond, but his silence spoke volumes. Clara felt her heart shattering into pieces, falling apart beyond repair. She took a deep breath, gathering the last remnants of her pride. "Fine, if you want a divorce, I won't hold you back." Nicholas's eyes widened slightly, perhaps not expecting her to accept it so easily. But Clara didn't give him time to ponder. She stepped closer, her eyes red and filled with resolve. "But before we sign the divorce papers, I want one last night together." Nicholas stiffened, his lips pressed tightly, as if torn between refusing and agreeing. "Clara, I don't want to." She cut him off, her voice trembling but firm. "Just one night. Let me understand why we've come to this point. After that, if you still want to leave, I won't ask any more questions." The room fell into silence once more, filled only with the heavy breathing of Nicholas. Finally, he gave a slight nod, accepting her request. Clara closed her eyes, struggling to hold back the tears threatening to fall. "Hello, Soul Stories family. I hope you're all doing well. May God bless you with love, joy, and peace. I pray your days shine bright, your burdens ease, and your dreams come true. How did our last story touch you? Share your thoughts in the comments. I truly value them. Lately, I've noticed a drop in views, so if these stories have brought you comfort, please invite your loved ones to join us. You're more than subscribers, you're family. Your presence means the world to me. Let's continue this journey together, from the night of the divorce proposal. Since the night Nicholas suggested divorce, he had become a stranger. He rarely came home, spent most of his time at the company, and when he did return, his eyes no longer held the tenderness they once did. Instead, there was avoidance, distant touches and curt responses. Clara realized that their marriage was slowly sinking into a chasm of silence and estrangement. Every night she lay on their vast bed, staring up at the ceiling. The emptiness engulfed her, like a cold blanket suffocating her with every breath. She asked herself hundreds of times, what happened? When did Nicholas change? The happy memories of the past played like a slow-motion film in her mind, tightening the knot in her heart. The late-night calls, the hurriedly hidden messages, the times he returned home with weary eyes and hesitant words. Clara noticed it all, but she chose to remain silent. She was afraid to hear the answer, afraid to face the truth that she might no longer be the only woman in Nicholas's heart. And then the fateful day arrived, the night before she would sign the divorce papers. The room was bathed in the soft glow of the golden lights, but it could not dispel the icy atmosphere between them. Clara sat on their familiar sofa, her eyes fixed on Nicholas, as if trying to etch his image into her memory one last time. Nicholas sat across from her, silent as a statue, his dark eyes staring down at the floor, avoiding her gaze. She took a deep breath, feeling the tightness in her chest. "Do you remember, Nicholas?" Her voice trembled, but she tried to stay calm. "What we once had?" Nicholas didn't respond, his hands clasped together so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Clara closed her eyes, swallowing the lump rising in her throat. "I still remember the first time we met." She let out a bitter smile, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Back then, I was just an aspiring designer, and you were the ambitious young man willing to risk everything to build your career. We once thought that as long as we had each other, it was enough." Clara stood up, walking over to the window where her lonely reflection stared back at her. She turned around, her gaze piercing through Nicholas. "You once promised me that no matter what happened, you would never let go. So why now, Nicholas? Why are you the one walking away?" Nicholas remained silent, his eyes still cast downward. Pain flickered in them, but he refused to let it show. Clara clenched her fists, feeling her heartbreak manifest into silent sobs. She stepped closer, her eyes filled with despair. "Nicholas, do you still love me? Tell me the truth. Or was our love never enough for you?" The question hung heavily in the air, but Nicholas remained silent. Clara let out a bitter laugh, feeling her heart shatter. "It's because of her, isn't it? Because of Victoria." Her voice cracked. Nicholas finally looked up, his eyes filled with an unbearable sorrow, but he only sighed. "Clara, don't make this harder than it already is." Those words were the final straw. Clara broke down in tears, her sobs filling the empty room. "Harder? Do you even know how much pain I've endured since the day you suggested divorce? Every night I ask myself, what did I do wrong? Why did we come to this? I did everything for you, for this marriage, and yet you let go so easily." She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders trembling. Nicholas stood up, wanting to reach out to her, but his hand hesitated in the air before he withdrew it. "I'm sorry." His voice was hoarse, but it was as cold as a verdict. Clara shook her head, her tearful eyes filled with despair. "I don't need your apology, Nicholas. I need you to reconsider. Tell me that we still have a chance, that you still love me." Nicholas turned away, his hands clenched into fists. "It's too late, Clara. It's over." Those words pierced Clara like a knife to the heart. She let out a painful laugh, the bitterness laced with anger. "Too late? Then what did all these years mean to you? We started from nothing, we endured hardships together, and now because of a woman from your past, you're willing to destroy it all?" Nicholas shut his eyes tightly as if trying to block out her words. I have no choice. Clara took a step back, laughing through her tears, her voice drenched in agony. No, Nicholas. Your choice was to let me go. Your choice was to give up on us. She turned away, swallowing the sobs threatening to escape. Thank you for everything, for the happy days, and for the despair I never thought I'd experience. The heavy silence consumed the room, with only Nicholas's sighs breaking through the stillness. Clara walked to the table, picking up the pen. Her hand trembled as she signed the divorce papers, each stroke of the pen tearing her heart apart, each tear falling onto the paper, a desperate plea to hold on to something already lost. She set the pen down and looked at Nicholas one last time. I hope you find happiness. Nicholas lowered his head, unable to meet her eyes. Clara took a deep breath, gathering the last shreds of her courage, and walked away. But her heart shattered into irreparable pieces. As the door clicked shut, Nicholas collapsed onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. He couldn't cry, but the pain gnawed at him, relentless and unforgiving. He knew he had just lost the most precious thing in his life, but he had no other choice. And Clara, as she stepped out of that room, knew that she had lost everything she once held dear. But what hurt the most was that Nicholas never even tried to hold on to her. A few days after that fateful night, Clara Carter's apartment was still shrouded in a heavy silence. Nicholas had left. The sweet memories that once filled this space were now mere echoes of heart-wrenching pain. Every corner of the house bore traces of a love that had fractured. The sofa where they once curled up together on cold winter nights, the kitchen where Clara used to cook his favorite meals, and the bedroom, now an empty and terrifyingly lonely space. She walked through each room, her fingers lightly tracing familiar objects, her heart weighed down by sorrow. Finally, Clara understood that she could no longer stay here. Every object, every photograph, every breath in this apartment reminded her of Nicholas, the man who had once been her entire world, but had also pushed her away for reasons she never truly understood. Clara decided to leave. She began packing, carefully folding away the pieces of their shared life, one item at a time. She placed the dresses Nicholas once admired, the gifts he had given her, in a separate corner. But as her eyes swept across his desk, a strange feeling crept into her heart. The drawer, which was always locked, was now slightly ajar, almost as if inviting her to step into his hidden world. Despite knowing she shouldn't, curiosity and the desperate need for answers pushed her forward. Clara hesitantly pulled the drawer open, and immediately a thick stack of documents caught her attention. The name printed on the top sheet made her heart clench in hatred. Victoria Hayes. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. Each word felt like a dagger slicing through her soul. Detailed records of the enormous sum Victoria was demanding, the threatening letters filled with sinister calculations, and the worst of all, evidence of Nicholas's involvement in illegal dealings from the past. Nicholas, I'm giving you two choices. Either pay up or lose everything. The police will surely be interested in these documents, and you know what the consequences will be. I won't wait any longer. Clara's vision blurred as she read through the threatening lines. So this was the reason behind his distance, the late-night disappearances, the hushed phone calls, the way he avoided her gaze. It wasn't because of another woman. It was the dark past he had been desperately trying to keep from her. She sank into the chair, clutching the papers tightly, the pain swelling in her chest. She didn't know what to feel, anger that he hadn't confided in her, or heartbreak that he had chosen to walk away, rather than let her face it with him. She remembered the way Nicholas had looked at her that final night, his eyes filled with unspoken words, as if he wanted to tell her everything but lacked the courage. Now she knew. He had tried to protect her by pushing her away, by ensuring she wouldn't have to bear the burden of his mistakes. Clara looked around the room, a wave of helplessness washing over her. She loved him, but was love enough to overcome all of this? Could she forgive him for hiding the truth from her all this time? Taking a deep breath, she tried to steady herself. The words on the documents danced before her eyes, but one thing became clear. Nicholas had not taken the easy way out. He had refused to comply with Victoria's demands. choosing instead to sacrifice everything, even their happiness. Suddenly, she recalled all the times he had silently watched her from a distance, the pained look in his eyes when he signed the divorce papers, the way his hands trembled as if resisting the urge to pull her back. Nicholas wasn't the heartless man she had thought. He was simply afraid of hurting her, of dragging her down with him. A tear slipped down Clara's cheek. She knew that no matter where she went, her heart would always belong to him. She loved Nicholas, even the darkest parts of him. But was that enough to change their reality? Clutching the stack of documents, she stood up. She had to do something. She couldn't let Nicholas fight this battle alone. But how could she make him understand that she was willing to stand by his side, to face whatever was coming, as long as they were together? Determination flickered in her eyes. Whether he wanted it or not, she would find a way to help him. Because if there was one thing she was certain of, it was that Nicholas had fought hard to protect her, and now it was her turn to protect him. Clara carefully packed the documents into her handbag and stepped out of the apartment with newfound resolve. She was no longer the weak woman of the past. She wouldn't let their love end because of a mistake buried in the past. As the door closed behind her, a new door opened in her heart, one filled with truth, determination, and a love that refused to be defeated. Meanwhile, Nicholas sat alone in the dimly lit room, the streetlights filtering through the window and casting harsh shadows across his gaunt face. On the table before him lay Victoria's blackmail letter, its every word a cruel reminder of the past he had fought so hard to bury. His blurred eyes skimmed over the cold, merciless text, his trembling fingers running across the paper's edge. In his mind, the memories of 2 months ago replayed like a slow-motion film, the moment when everything fell apart. 2 months ago, everything had still been beautiful then. Nicholas and Clara were living through the happiest days of their lives. They had just celebrated their wedding anniversary with a short trip, where Clara's radiant laughter echoed under the golden sunset, and Nicholas had found himself immersed in the rare serenity he had always longed for. She was the woman who made him believe that the past could remain buried, and that their future would be filled with nothing but happiness. The cozy dinners, the tight embraces each morning, the peaceful nights with her nestled beside him, these were things Nicholas had never dared to dream of. He had truly believed that he could escape his past, that he could become the man worthy of Clara's love. But then, on one fateful evening, his phone buzzed while they were preparing dinner together. Nicholas could remember it so clearly. Clara was in the kitchen, her hands skillfully chopping vegetables, humming softly to one of her favorite songs. He had smiled, feeling a profound sense of peace, until his eyes drifted to his phone screen. A message appeared from a number he knew all too well. Victoria. Nicholas, it's time for you to pay the price. I'm giving you 2 choices. Pay me the money we agreed upon, or prepare to face the authorities. Don't let Clara find out what you've done. You know she won't be able to handle it. His entire world collapsed in an instant. Nicholas froze, his heartbeat pounding so hard that he could hear it in his ears. Silently, he slipped the phone into his pocket, masking his turmoil with a forced smile. But from that moment on, unease coiled tightly around his chest, suffocating every breath, clouding every glance. That night, as Clara slept peacefully in his arms, Nicholas lay awake, staring at the ceiling with vacant eyes. He had always known that the past never truly stayed buried. Victoria, like a viper lying in wait, was ready to strike, tightening her grip on his life and threatening to destroy everything he had built. And this time, she wasn't just coming for him. She was coming for the woman he loved most. He knew he had 2 choices: pay the money to buy her silence, protecting their current life, and continuing to live in a fragile illusion. But Nicholas understood that money would never be enough to quench Victoria's insatiable greed. If he paid her now, she would only return, dragging him deeper into the nightmare he had fought so hard to escape. Face the law and accept the consequences of his past mistakes. But the thought that tormented him most wasn't the loss of his career or reputation. It was Clara. He wasn't afraid of her judgment. He knew she loved him enough to forgive. But could she endure the agony of watching him go to prison, of being left alone for years to come? He couldn't bear the thought of Clara enduring such suffering and loneliness because of him. Nicholas wrestled with these thoughts for days. He watched Clara, the way she smiled at him, the tenderness in her touch, the unwavering love in her eyes, and it shattered him from within. If he told her the truth, she would never leave. She would fight for him, stand by his side through the storm. But then what? She would have to endure the scrutiny, the judgmental whispers of society, and the shattered future she had once dreamed of. Nicholas couldn't afford to be selfish. He loved her too much to let her suffer because of him. And so, with a heart weighed down by unbearable sorrow, he made the hardest decision of his life, to let her go. Nicholas stood in front of their apartment door, his weary eyes fixed on the lock as if he were standing at the most crucial crossroads of his life. He took a deep breath, his hand clenched tightly, trying to steady the trembling that had crept into every fiber of his being. Inside, Clara was waiting, still the gentle, warm woman he loved more than himself. And yet, after tonight, she would no longer be his. As the door creaked open, the soft golden light spilled across Clara's radiant face. She emerged from the kitchen, flour dusting her hands, her smile as tender as ever. The kind of smile that had always made him forget all the worries in the world. "You're home," she said cheerfully, wiping her hands on a towel. "I made your favorite beef stew." Nicholas stood still, watching her, his heart twisting in pain. He knew this moment would be etched in his memory forever, and he was about to be the one to shatter it. "What's wrong?" Clara approached him, concern shimmering in her eyes. "You look so tired. Is something bothering you?" He forced a smile, but it came out as a stiff nod. His hands clenched tighter, reminding himself that he had to be strong, that he had to be firm. He couldn't let her get entangled in the dark past he was facing. "Clara!" His voice was hoarse, each word feeling like a dagger piercing his own heart. "I think we should end this." The room fell into an unbearable silence. Clara froze, her wide eyes searching his face, confusion and disbelief clouding her expression. "End this," she whispered, her voice cracking. "What do you mean?" Nicholas turned away, unable to meet her gaze. He knew that if he looked into her eyes for even a second longer, his resolve would crumble, and he wouldn't be able to leave. "We should get a divorce." The two words shattered the air between them. He heard Clara's breath hitch, her footsteps retreating as if trying to escape the painful reality. Tears welled in her eyes, rolling down her cheeks as her voice quivered with heartbreak. "No, Nicholas? What did I do wrong?" Nicholas gritted his teeth, his entire body stiffening as Clara reached out to him, her trembling hands barely touching his arm, as if afraid that if she let go, he would disappear forever. "We were happy. We've been through so much to be together. Why are you giving up on us now?" She was searching for answers, for something, anything that made sense. But Nicholas knew he couldn't tell her the truth. If she knew, she would never leave him, and that was what terrified him the most. He didn't want her to suffer. He couldn't let her wait in pain, not knowing if their love had a future. "I'm sorry, Clara," he whispered, his hands hanging limply by his sides, resisting the urge to hold her. "The truth is, I don't love you anymore. I have someone else." Those words felt like poison spilling from his lips. Clara's eyes widened in shock, disbelief washing over her face. "You're lying," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "I know you still love me. Why are you doing this?" Nicholas shut his eyes, remaining silent. His silence was all the confirmation she needed, and in that moment, Clara understood. Perhaps their love story had truly come to an end. In the days that followed, Nicholas never came home again. He couldn't bear the thought of watching Clara break a little more each day. Every time he passed by their apartment, his heart clenched painfully. But he knew this was the only way she could learn to forget him and move on without more pain. Clara continued calling him, leaving long messages filled with pleas, asking him to come back, to explain. But Nicholas never responded. Every message only deepened his agony, reminding him of what he had lost. He buried himself in work, hoping to drown out the pain, but no amount of distraction could erase the truth. He was losing the most precious thing in his life. The night before signing the divorce papers, Clara sat beside him on their familiar sofa, her eyes swollen from endless tears. Yet a faint glimmer of hope still lingered. Her small hand gently grasped his, her voice trembling. "Nicholas, tell me this isn't real." He looked at her for a long time, wanting so desperately to say the words he had buried deep inside, to tell her that he still loved her, that he didn't want to let go, but he couldn't. "Clara, it's time to let go." She shook her head, her tears falling freely. "We can get through anything, can't we?" "I don't need anything, Nicholas. I just need you." Nicholas swallowed hard, the turmoil inside him crashing like violent waves. He wanted to tear up the papers, to hold her and beg for forgiveness, but he couldn't. When Clara finally picked up the pen and signed her name, Nicholas felt his world collapse around him. He knew he had lost her forever. Clara walked away, leaving him alone with the signed divorce papers. Nicholas watched her silhouette disappear behind the door, an unbearable emptiness settling inside him. As the door clicked shut, Nicholas sank into the couch, his head buried in his hands. He couldn't cry, but the pain gnawed at him mercilessly. He had made the ultimate sacrifice, and he knew deep down his heart would always belong to her. Even if he lost everything, even if he had to bear the weight of his past mistakes, Nicholas was willing to accept it. Because only by doing so could Clara live a peaceful life, free from the haunting shadows of his past. With a trembling hand, he picked up a pen and wrote his final letter to Clara. "Clara, by the time you read this letter, I will no longer be here. I have thought long and hard, and I know that the best choice is to let you go. I cannot allow you to be dragged into my mistakes, nor can I let you sacrifice your youth and your future for someone like me. You have an entire life ahead of you. Live it happily, forget about me. Don't wait for me, because I am not worthy. Nicholas. Star." His hands shook as he folded the letter, the weight of his decision pressing heavily on his chest. He felt as if a boulder had settled in his lungs, making it difficult to breathe, but he knew he couldn't turn back. With a heavy heart, he picked up his phone and called his lawyer, informing them that he was ready to face the law. Tonight would be his last night of freedom before embarking on a new journey, a journey without Clara. Nicholas cast a final glance around his office, the space that once stood as a testament to his ambition and perseverance, the place he had built from nothing. But now all of it felt meaningless without Clara by his side. He rose from his chair, draping his coat over his shoulders, his eyes weary yet resolute. No matter how much it hurt, he believed this was the only way for Clara to move forward without the burdens of his past weighing her down. Stepping out of his office, Nicholas melted into the cold London night, where the streetlights cast elongated shadows of his solitary figure. He walked slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last, but his mind was clear. When the sun rose, everything would change forever. After discovering the truth, Clara raced through the bustling streets of London, her heart pounding wildly against her chest. Her hurried footsteps echoed on the pavement as if she were trying to outrun time itself. She had just left Nicholas's office, where she had heard the shocking news. The company had been fully transferred, leaving no trace of him behind. A wave of panic consumed her, her trembling hands gripping the steering wheel tightly as chaotic thoughts swirled in her mind, making it nearly impossible to breathe. "Nicholas, where are you?" She couldn't lose him, not like this. Did he truly believe that leaving her was the way to protect her? Clara had already lost so much, and she wouldn't let him disappear from her life again. Arriving at Nicholas's apartment, Clara fumbled with the keys, her hands shaking uncontrollably as she pushed the door open. Darkness engulfed the space, and the familiar warmth she once knew was gone. Only a cold, empty silence remained. Her eyes frantically scanned the room, searching for any sign of him, and then they landed on the wooden table. A neatly folded letter lay there, and her heart plummeted when she recognized his familiar handwriting. "Clara, by the time you read this letter, I will no longer be here. I have chosen to face everything, to leave you so that you can have a better life. I'm sorry for keeping the truth from you, for not having the courage to go through this together. Don't look for me, Clara. Forget me and live the happy life you deserve. Loving you more than myself and Nicholas." Tears streamed down Clara's face as she clutched the letter tightly, her knees threatening to buckle beneath her. But no, she wouldn't give up. She had to find him. Without a moment's hesitation, she dashed out of the apartment, hailing the first taxi she could find. Her voice trembled as she blurted out the address of the nearest police station, desperation dripping from every word. Each passing second felt like 1,000 needles piercing her heart. As the golden hues of the setting sun streamed through the car windows, Clara's chest tightened with fear and regret. She sifted through her memories, searching for any signs that he had been planning this, but she had been too caught up in her own pain to notice the cracks forming within him. The taxi came to a screeching halt in front of the police station, and Clara bolted inside, her frantic gaze darting around the room. "Excuse me, I'm looking for Nicholas Hayes. Has he come in yet?" Her voice quivered, almost pleading. The officer behind the desk regarded her with a look of quiet sympathy before nodding solemnly. "He turned himself in a few hours ago. I'm sorry. You're too late." Clara's entire world collapsed beneath her feet. She stood frozen, her breath coming in ragged gasps, tears blurring her vision. She was too late. Nicholas had already made the choice he believed was best for her, severing their bond in the most painful way possible. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest, the weight of his absence crushing her, but deep down, a new determination flickered. She wouldn't let this be the end. Nicholas had given up on himself, but she never would. A few days later, Clara sat in the visitation room, her hands tightly clasped together on the cold metal table, her heart pounding wildly in her chest as the heavy iron door creaked open. And then he walked in. Nicholas had grown thinner, his face weary, but his eyes, those familiar, warm eyes, still held the same tenderness she had always known. The moment their gazes met, Clara couldn't hold back the tears. She shot up from her chair, rushing toward him, her trembling hands reaching for his face, now etched with lines of sorrow. "Nicholas, why did you do this?" Her voice broke, each sob catching painfully in her throat. Nicholas offered a faint smile, but it was nothing like the ones he used to give her. "Clara, you shouldn't have come here. I told you. You need to move on with your life." Clara shook her head, tears spilling freely down her cheeks. "No, you're wrong. Do you really think I can be happy without you? Do you honestly believe I can forget you and start over?" Nicholas fell silent, his eyes filled with both pain and regret. He had convinced himself that this was the right thing to do, but now standing in front of Clara, he realized he had underestimated the strength of her love. Clara took his hands, gripping them tightly, her gaze fierce with determination. "Did you really think I would leave you because of your past? Do you think I would choose a life without you, Nicholas? I will wait for you. Whether it's 1 year, 2 years, or however long it takes, I will be here." Nicholas lowered his head slightly, his voice soft yet filled with sorrow. "Clara, you don't have to do this. I don't want you to suffer because of me." Before he could finish, she placed a finger gently on his lips, silencing him. "You don't get to decide that for me anymore, Nicholas. I love you, and I will wait for you to come home." They stood in silence, the world around them fading away. Nicholas stared at her for a long moment, and for the first time in months, a flicker of peace settled within him. He squeezed her hands in his eyes reflecting a quiet surrender to the love he had tried so hard to push away. Clara wiped her tears, a soft smile breaking through her sadness. "We'll get through this. Do you hear me?" Nicholas nodded, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, he allowed himself to believe. Maybe, just maybe, there was still hope for them. 2 months later, time moved slowly, each passing day a silent battle against loneliness and the aching longing that consumed Clara. It had been 2 months since Nicholas was taken away, and every day she tried to stay strong. But in the long, solitary nights, the pain surged more intensely than ever. This morning, as she stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom, Clara's gaze fell on her reflection. She gently placed a hand on her abdomen, where a tiny life was growing within her, the purest embodiment of the love she and Nicholas had shared. A trembling smile crossed her lips, but it was soon replaced by silent tears rolling down her cheeks. She had suspected it weeks ago when subtle changes in her body emerged, when the morning nausea became more frequent. Yet she had been too afraid to believe it, until the pregnancy test confirmed her suspicion with two unmistakable lines. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers tenderly tracing the small curve of her belly. "Nicholas, we have a child," she whispered to the empty room, but almost immediately she steadied herself. She made the decision not to tell him. Not yet. She didn't want to add to his burden when he was already facing so much pain. She would raise their child alone and wait for him to come back, a silent promise she was willing to carry. Clara knew this decision wouldn't be easy. Raising a child alone wasn't just a physical challenge. It would test her emotional strength in ways she couldn't yet fathom. But when she thought of Nicholas, of the day he would return and see their child for the first time, her resolve strengthened. This child was their hope, their reason to keep going. The day of the trial. On the day of Nicholas's trial, Clara sat quietly in the back row of the courtroom, her hands clenched tightly together in anxiety. She hadn't been able to sleep for nights leading up to this moment, her heart constricting each time she imagined what the outcome might be. Nicholas stood in the defendant's dock, his posture composed, his gaze steady and unwavering. He did not try to evade responsibility, nor did he seek to justify his actions, because he knew that the time had come to pay for his past mistakes. Then came the verdict: 5 years in prison. The judge's gavel struck down, and in that instant, it felt as though the entire world had stopped. Clara's breath caught in her throat, and though she had braced herself for this, the weight of reality hit her with crushing force. She struggled to hold back her tears, her chest tight with an unbearable pain. Nicholas turned toward her, his eyes filled with regret, love, and silent apologies. Clara met his gaze, her tear-filled eyes unwavering, and she slowly nodded. No words were needed. Her gaze said everything. She would wait. She would wait through the years, through the hardships, through the loneliness. Because love, the kind of love they shared, wasn't something that could be erased by time or distance. As the guards led him away, Clara sat there, her heart heavy yet full of quiet determination. She touched her belly gently, whispering to the tiny life within, "We'll wait for him together." And in that moment, though Nicholas was walking away from her, she knew deep inside that their love had never been stronger. Not far from the defendant's seat, Victoria, Nicholas's ex-wife, sat pale and visibly shaken as she received her verdict. She had never imagined that Nicholas would choose the path of self-surrender, breaking free from her control on his own terms. This not only shattered her carefully calculated threats, but also dragged her into the depths of legal consequences. The evidence against Victoria was irrefutable. Documents, testimonies, and records of illegal transactions she had orchestrated were all laid bare before the court. In the end, she was sentenced to 7 years in prison for fraud and complicity in illicit dealings. As she was led away, Victoria turned back to glare at Nicholas, her eyes blazing with hatred. "You think you can escape me, Nicholas?" she hissed through clenched teeth. But Nicholas simply looked at her, his expression unreadable, devoid of any emotion. He had made his choice, and she no longer held any power over him. Clara returned to the apartment alone, the weight of emptiness pressing heavily on her slender shoulders. But this time, she refused to break. She placed a gentle hand on her belly and whispered to the tiny life growing inside her, "We will wait for Daddy, my love. We will be strong together." The days that followed were a test of endurance, but Clara refused to let grief consume her. She threw herself into work, managing the fashion chain that she and Nicholas had once built together. She couldn't afford to collapse, not when every passing day brought her closer to the moment Nicholas would come home. Carrying a child without him by her side was the hardest thing Clara had ever faced. Mornings greeted her with overwhelming nausea and the ache of solitude. Nights were filled with silent tears and whispered reassurances to herself. Yet in those moments of doubt, she would close her eyes and picture Nicholas's face, his tender gaze that once held the promise of forever. And she reminded herself that every struggle, every hardship was for him and for their child. Each month she wrote letters to Nicholas, filling them with stories of her daily life, encouragement, and love. But she never once mentioned their child. Clara feared that if he knew, he would be tormented by guilt, and the last thing she wanted was to burden him further while he was already enduring so much. The letters she received from him were filled with simple inquiries about her well-being, words of caution to take care of herself, and above all, heartfelt apologies. Clara would smile softly each time she read them, knowing that despite the distance, their love remained unshaken. Winter eventually gave way to spring, and Clara felt the gradual changes within her body. Her belly grew larger, and with each gentle kick of their baby, she found new strength to persevere. The tiny movements were a reminder that she wasn't alone. Nicholas's love still lived inside of her. Every night before drifting off to sleep, she would gently place her hands on her belly and whisper, "Daddy will come home soon. Be strong and brave like Mommy, okay?" And with each passing day, Clara counted down the time, her heart filled with hope and longing, waiting for the moment Nicholas would return to them. 5 years later, the sky over London was unusually blue today. Clara stood silently in front of the cold iron gates of the prison, her heart pounding with anticipation. Her hand gently tightened around the small fingers of her son, feeling the warmth of the child she had nurtured with love and sacrifice over the past 5 years. The little boy looked up at her, his bright, curious eyes reflecting everything she held dear in this world. Those eyes, that hair, that face, he was Nicholas's mirror image, a living reminder of the love they had shared. "Mummy, what does Daddy look like?" the boy asked, his voice filled with innocent excitement. Clara smiled softly, though her heart was a swirling storm of emotions. "Your father, he's a very special man, and today you'll finally get to meet him." The heavy iron gate groaned open, pulling her back to the present. The moment she had waited for, dreamt of, and longed for had finally arrived. A tall figure stepped forward, his shoulders leaner, his face marked by the weight of time, yet his eyes still held the same depth she had fallen in love with. Nicholas stopped in his tracks the moment his eyes met hers. Then they fell to the little boy holding her hand. Time seemed to stand still. Nicholas's breath hitched, his eyes widening in disbelief. He stood frozen, taking in the sight of the small boy staring back at him with the same features he once had as a child. A wave of emotion surged through him, his heart pounding so hard it felt as if it might burst from his chest. "Clara," his voice was hoarse, his feet moving hesitantly toward them. "Why didn't you tell me?" Clara swallowed the lump in her throat, her eyes welling with tears. How could she put into words the lonely nights, the silent tears, and the unwavering hope she had clung to all these years? Looking into his eyes, she spoke softly, her voice trembling, yet full of love. "I wanted you to leave without regret, to return and meet him with pride, not guilt." Nicholas fell to his knees, his eyes never leaving his son. "My son," he whispered, his hand shaking as it reached out to touch the soft curls of the boy's hair. The child gazed at him, curiosity shining in his innocent eyes, but there was no hesitation, no fear. As if in that moment he instinctively knew. This man was his father. The boy stepped forward, wrapping his tiny arms around Nicholas's neck. "Daddy," he said, his voice soft yet sure. Nicholas shuddered, and in that embrace, the walls he had built over the years crumbled. Tears slipped down his face as he held his son tightly, feeling the warmth he had yearned for, the love he thought he had lost forever. Clara stood nearby, tears streaming down her cheeks, but a smile graced her lips. She watched the man she loved, now a father, overwhelmed yet filled with a happiness they had both been denied for too long. Nicholas looked up at her, his voice breaking. "How much have I missed, Clara?" She shook her head gently, stepping closer to him and grasping his hand firmly. "Nothing, because you're here now." Nicholas pulled both of them into his arms, his chest rising and falling with deep, ragged breaths. Clara could feel his heartbeat against hers. He was still the Nicholas she loved, but now with the scars of his past and the promise of a new beginning. "I'm sorry," he whispered, pressing a tender kiss to her forehead, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry for pushing you away, for not knowing you were carrying all of this alone." Clara cupped his face, her touch gentle but unwavering. "You don't have to apologize, Nicholas. We're here, and we have a chance to start over." Their son giggled softly, wrapping his little fingers around Nicholas's, anchoring him to the present. Nicholas looked down, his eyes shimmering with newfound hope, and for the first time in years he smiled. A genuine, heartfelt smile. It was as if he had just rediscovered a missing piece of his soul. Nicholas stood up, his grip firm on Clara's hand and their son's, as they walked together out of the prison gates. A new beginning awaited them, a future free of secrets and shadows, filled only with love and hope. And this time, Nicholas silently vowed to himself he would never lose them again. Nicholas and Clara started rebuilding their lives from scratch, but this time, in a different way. They established a charity foundation named Hope, with the desire to provide second chances to those who had stumbled, helping former prisoners reintegrate into society. Through vocational training programs and financial support for struggling families, they aim to restore hope and faith in life for those who had lost their way. Nicholas took an active role in sharing his story, speaking at support groups and rehabilitation programs. He spoke with his heart, recounting his journey of mistakes and redemption, hoping to inspire others. He told them that mistakes were not the end, but rather a new beginning if one had the courage to change and take responsibility. Clara, on the other hand, worked tirelessly behind the scenes. She organized events, sought donations from compassionate individuals, and leveraged her connections to expand their reach. Together, they created more than just jobs. They built a community of people who had faced struggles similar to Nicholas's, supporting and encouraging each other to rise above their past. Each day, they witnessed people who had once been lost find a renewed sense of purpose. And that, to Nicholas and Clara, was the greatest reward they could ever ask for. Through their journey, they realized that happiness didn't come from wealth or social status, but from the simplest of things: forgiveness, patience, and love. Clara had taught Nicholas that no matter how dark the past might be, with sincere love, anyone could start over. For Nicholas, the most valuable lesson he had learned was the importance of honesty and responsibility. He once believed that leaving Clara was the only way to protect her, but she had shown him that true love wasn't about silent sacrifice, but about facing challenges together. Years passed and their cozy suburban home was filled with laughter. Gone were the restless nights filled with worry. Gone were the fears of the past resurfacing. Instead, every morning they woke up to simple joys: a warm breakfast together, sunny afternoons playing soccer in the backyard with their son, and peaceful evenings curled up watching their favorite movies. Their little boy was a living testament to Nicholas's transformation. Watching him grow, taking his first steps, and seeing his innocent smile reminded Nicholas every day of the precious second chance life had given him, a chance he would never take for granted again. Clara remained his unwavering pillar of support. She never longed for luxury or extravagance, only a peaceful and happy home where she could see Nicholas laughing with their son every day. One evening, as the sunset painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Nicholas and Clara sat on their front porch, her hand nestled firmly in his. Nicholas gazed at her, a soft smile playing on his lips. "I once thought I'd never get the chance to start over. But you showed me that, as long as we're together, anything is possible." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder, her voice gentle yet resolute. "Life isn't measured by the mistakes we've made in the past, but by how we choose to make things right and live better. And you've done that, Nicholas." As the golden light bathed them in its warmth, their family stood as a testament to resilience and love. They were no longer shackled by their past, but instead, they were writing a new chapter, one of forgiveness, love, and hope. Challenges would come, no doubt, but this time, they would face them head-on, armed with unwavering hearts and the steadfast love they had built together. Thank you for following our story. Did this story touch your heart? Leave a comment below. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.